Tips, tricks, and advice for scuba diving off a jet ski. It's a lot easier than you think. Updated, shorter version of a how-to video I did about a year ago. I got another jet ski since then. Now have a GPSD before, which has a nice front compartment. It has a lot more storage. Previous older video I did, which is much longer, I used a Yamaha EX Deluxe. That's on the lower end. So this video will be a little bit different from the other how-to video because the configuration changes a little bit because of the front compartment, the additional storage space on the GP. Throughout this video, you'll notice that the narration and the actual video aren't matching up sometimes in the order of packing. And the reason is I go out so much that I usually leave my BCD attached to my jet ski at all times. I usually leave all my masks, snorkel fins, dive flag, as much as I can on the jet ski at all times. It really saves time in packing when I go out so much. So if the video is off from my narration, unless you're going out all the time, you kind of ignore parts of the video. Like, for example, it shows me fueling up the jet ski with all the gear on. That's because I went out the day before and I knew I was going out the day after. So I just left the gear on. The thing you'll want to do is make sure your jet ski itself is squared away before you start loading things up. The first thing I do is first make sure gas is topped off. Right here, I found this to be the easiest way to fill up my jet ski, just with 5 gallons, and that's a little siphon hose. You can get those at different outlets. You can get them on Amazon too, and it's a real way you can just walk away from your jet ski and let the gas siphon in. You don't have to worry about spilling it. I also use a rope. Most of the time I tie a rope onto the gas can just so it doesn't fall off in the wind. You want to make sure your oil is at a correct level, not over or underfilled. Make sure you have two lanyards in case one breaks or you lose one. You always want to back up. I always keep a spare lanyard in the rear compartment under the seat. Sure you have your Coast Guard approved safety items like a fire extinguisher, your license, registration, all that good stuff. I always leave mine on the ski, so that should you probably do the same as well. Before I put my ski in the water, I always check my mooring lines. I have redundant mooring lines. I always have two of them, and I always double check to make sure they're in good condition. I don't ever use an anchor because I go off the coast of Key Largo, and there's always great places to moor up. But I always have two. That's a very important thing. That's part of the redundancies. Always have two mooring lines. On one of the mooring lines, I put a clip, and then the other one I just tie up. And that way I have two different mechanisms. One's going to be tie up with half hitches on the mooring line, and the second line is going to be clip on. In case a knot fails, I'll have the clip. If the clip fails, I'll have the knot. So if you don't have your mooring lines set and squared away, it will really suck if you come up out of the water and your ski is gone. Mooring lines that you see here and all the lines attached to my jet ski, I got off of Amazon. They're 15 feet long and they come with an eyelet already made at one end. So I can just loop the rope through that eyelet around the bow eye on the front of the jet ski, and I keep the two lines secured that way. I keep those lines stored in the front compartment and to ensure that they don't come out and get sucked into the grate into the jet. I make sure I tie a knot right where the ropes go just past the lip where the front compartment shuts down. That way, when the front compartment closes, those knots will keep the rope from coming out. Now I start loading up the scuba gear on the jet ski. The first thing I pack are my regulators. I pack them in the front compartment, but in the front compartment on the bottom, I put an extra life jacket that serves as padding for the regulators when they're getting bounced around, especially if you're jumping swells out on the Atlantic Ocean. So in the 150 or so times I've been out, I've only had my regulators fail about 3 times. But when it fails on you once after you're already out there, it's nice to have a backup. So I try to carry redundant of everything, and I carry two regulators. I put my regulators in, I put a wetsuit or a towel or padding between them to make sure that when they bounce around, they don't mess each other up. Next thing I pack up in the front compartment are my mask and my snorkel. I also carry redundant mask and snorkel. If you get out there and you don't have or you lose your mask, you're screwed. You're done. You could probably get away with without a snorkel, but if you lose your mask, it's not going to be a scuba or snorkel day. Another thing that I keep in the front compartment is my dive flag. This flag is attached to three collapsible tent poles. I make sure that the poles, the length of them are at least 5 feet. If you're down underwater and you have to surface and you don't know where your ski is and you're in like 6 foot swells, and if you can't find your dive flag because it's not up high enough, then you're screwed. So that's one of the lessons learned is make sure your flag is up at least 5 or 6 foot above the ski. Next to get loaded up are the tanks. You'll want to do this with the ski out of the water. Doing it with the ski in the water is a pain in the ass. The tanks get loaded up along with the fins and water shoes at this time to make sure that the tanks both stay secure and that they don't mess up the jet ski fiberglass. I put fins on one side of the tank between the fiberglass and the jet ski, and on the other side of the tank, I put water shoes. And this works out perfectly on the Yamaha jet skis. It keeps that tank in there nice and secure. You can press down on it and you can hear it squeak and lock in. And out of the 150 times I've been out on the water, I've never lost a tank, not even in 9 foot swells. So this is a great way to both secure the tanks and to keep the tanks from damaging the jet ski. Also, by putting fins on both sides of the sidewell, that ensures that you always have redundant fins when you go out. You can probably get away with just diving, free diving without fins, but it's a pain in the ass. Scuba diving without fins, forget it, and that's a no-go. So redundant fins. This also serves to have redundant fins. The next things that I load up are things that go on the rear seat, on top of the rear seat. Then I'm gonna use a line to secure them and hold them down on the seat. These are probably gonna be optional things for you, but for me, I always go out with them. Um, the first thing I'm gonna pack on the rear seat is gonna be the underwater jetpack. You don't have to have an underwater jetpack, obviously, but I've found these things to be incredibly helpful, especially when there's a strong current. This underwater jetpack has really helped me out. It's helped me overcome the currents and saved my butt a couple times. This is a Lafitte water scooter, and it's actually two of them you can attach together. You can go Lefeet, I think is how it's spelled. These things are great, and they'll fit on the jet ski really easy. I also go out with a pony tank as well, and I put this behind at the farthest behind the jetpack. The pony tank I'll always take out if I'm doing a deep dive like the Spiegel Grove. If I'm going to go below 60 feet or so, I'm always going to take out a pony tank. This is something I didn't originally go out with, but I had an issue underwater, and it caused me to burn a lot of air when I was at the Spiegel Grove, and I was about 90 feet down. After that adventure, then I now I always go out with a pony tank. So what you're seeing here is this is a configuration for a deep dive as well as a shallow dive. To help ensure that these things stay secure and snug on the back seat, I use two different lines. One is a strap, the blue strap you see there, and that strap goes under the front seat. Um, that way, it's not going to ever pop up. It's nice and secure. And the two ends, what I do is I loop each end through each side of the jetpack handle, and then I make sure it's nice and snug and secure, and put half hitches on that. That's going to help prevent the jetpack from sliding backwards. Next thing I do is I take one of those 15-foot lines, secure it to the back handle. Then I wrap it around over the pony tank and around the handles of the jetpack. And I do that 4 times, go over it 4 times. And then I secure the line on the back handle, the end of it with half hitches. And I make sure that when I wrap that line around each time, I'm pulling really tight and I keep it really tight the whole time so it doesn't loosen up. I also make sure that the two clips that are on the pony tank, that each clip is attached to one of those line part of that line. This way, if the line ever comes loose, that pony tank might start bouncing around or rattling around. You'll know it, but it won't fall off, come off, and slide out and go into the ocean. This configuration for securing the jetpack and the pony tank has proven to work really well. I'll go out and up to 6 foot swells, and if they're 2 to 3 foot swells, I'll jump them. I'll be going 45 miles an hour and jump them. So I'm in the air a lot. I'm bouncing a lot. I went out over 100 times in rough water, and I've never lost the tank nor the jetpack. They've stayed secure really well using this configuration. The last things to get packed up are the smaller things. These things are either going to go in a dry bag, that smaller console compartment, or on my body. I put my wallet, which always has my Dan card in there, credit cards, and always some cash in the dry bag. I sometimes put a spare set of goggles or glasses in the dry bag, or I'll put the spare set of goggles or glasses in the console compartment. Having a spare set of eye protection is key. If you can't see when you're on your ski, that's very bad. So eye protection, if it's really sunny too, you're going to want to keep those UV rays off your eyes. I would recommend polarized glasses. It can help you see deeper into the water a lot of times, avoid some obstacles. I also keep a spare set of headphones in the dry bag. Uh, I went through at least 15 so-called waterproof headphones that I got off of Amazon, and the salt water just tears them up. Sometimes when it's really rough out there in the ocean, I just get drenched with salt water, ocean water, and that tends to fry those things, even if they claim to be waterproof. So a spare set of headphones. That's headphones. Listening to music is also nice, so you don't have to listen to that annoying engine of the jet ski, which can really be annoying sometimes, especially if you're out for a while. I also keep a spare set of lightweight clothes, a shirt, and pair of shorts. This is nice to have if you want to go to an oceanside or bayside restaurant after scuba diving. It's nice to have something dry to put on. Or a lot of times you won't even use it. You'll dry out before you get to shore. But it's always nice to have a dry pair. I also ensure that I always go out with two dive knives. I store those in the console compartment, the small console compartment. One of the knives is a BCD attached knife. It stays attached to the BCD at all times. The only time I take it uh, out off the BCD, that dive knife, is when I'm moving, going on the jet ski on the water, and that's because with the if the BCD is bouncing all the time, there's a possibility that knife could pop out. But it just means that when I'm getting into the water, I have to remember to get that knife out of the console compartment and attach it back to the BCD. And that only takes a few seconds. The second knife that I always carry with me, it's a body attached dive knife. This stays on my body whenever I'm out on my ski. It's just a small knife I keep on the lower leg. So I saw some videos of people self-proclaimed experts um, bad-mouthing divers for carrying a body-attached dive knife. That's just ridiculous. So my advice to you is just ignore these people that are trying to make fun of you for always having a body-attached knife. That's just ridiculous to not have a body-attached knife when you're diving in the Atlantic Ocean. So if you ever hear a dive master or dive instructor try to discourage you from wearing a body attached dive knife, just ignore them and you'll always be in a better condition to save your life, your buddy's life, or maybe even help out a sea creature. Next to get packed up is the BCD. To do this, I put the straps, the shoulder straps, around the sides of the back handle and then connect them together. Again, this configuration for attaching the BCD this way has worked out the best. I've never had my BCD come loose in rough water or choppy water. Something that's a little bit different on my previous video, I did not used to pack the integrated weights on the BCD. I used to take them out of the BCD and keep them in the back compartment on the jet ski. For that, I was using the Mares integrated weights. And if you're familiar with those, you'll know that system is not a great system. They can come out really easy. However, with this configuration, the way the integrated weights are on the BCD, there's no chance of them popping loose and coming out. So now I keep the weights in the BCD at all times. And this also helps to secure the BCD. Sweet. Now it's time to have some fun. About half of the fun when scuba diving off a jet ski is riding out to the dive site. If you're on the Atlantic Ocean, you can get 2 to 6 foot swells, and jumping those things can be a blast. I recommend taking it very slow at first until you learn how to, unless you're really familiar with jumping ocean swells. I won't jump an ocean swell if it's more than 3 feet. I've done it with 4 foot swells a couple times, and that it can be really hard on a jet ski. So if it's 2 foot swells, those are perfect. If it's really choppy, I won't do it because you don't know how you're going to land. So now we can enjoy going in some ocean water and having some fun. So this is just to prove that you can go out with this configuration, with this packing, you can go out on the ocean in 2 to 5 foot swells and not lose your gear and have a lot of fun. The first thing I do when I get to the dive site is pick out where I'm going to moor up. Find the mooring line that I'm going to moor up to. And as I approach the mooring line, I'm going to slow down to about 5 to 10 miles an hour and make sure that the ski is going to run directly over that mooring line. But right before I get there, I'm going to kill the engine because I don't want that line to get sucked up into the jet. And then as I'm coasting over the mooring line, I'll reach down with one of my hands and I'll grab that mooring line that's attached to the mooring ball. After that, as quickly as possible without rushing, I open up the front compartment and I bring both of those mooring lines out. When I store those mooring lines, I'm going to make sure they're not tangled up either, because that's going to suck if you have to untangle those mooring lines when you're trying to moor up, especially in rough seas. So I get those mooring lines attached as quickly as possible without rushing. I've been I've been out there. I've had to attach to a mooring line in up to 6 foot seas, and I've never had a problem. The ski hasn't tipped over on me or anything like that. What makes it really difficult sometimes if you're trying to attach to a mooring line, the most difficult thing is if you're battling a strong current. If there's a strong current, that's going to be pushing really hard on your ski, and you're going to be with one hand trying to hold yourself on the ski and to that mooring line, and with the other hand, you're going to try to be attaching your mooring lines that are attached to your ski onto the mooring line that's attached to the mooring ball. So the current is going to be your biggest threat when you're out on your ski and when you're scuba diving, especially if you're going alone. So I get the two mooring lines moored up. I just let them loose in the water. And once my ski is moored up, then I just chill out. I don't rush. I don't think about speed and getting ready. I just take a moment and chill out and relax. This is a really great opportunity to just enjoy the view, being out on the water, and just let your mind reset. You're probably a little bit wound up from the jet ski ride, a little bit of rush from jumping the swells. So just give your body some time to chill out and reset, and make sure you're in a nice, peaceful place in your mind. This is really important that you do this. Otherwise, you're going to forget steps. You're going to not get your BCD configured correctly, things like that. You'll mess up if you try to rush. So don't do it. Take this opportunity while you're on the mooring line, just relax and enjoy your view and just being out on the water. If you're doing this for the first few times, you're probably going to have a little anxiety. So just breathe steadily and slowly through your nose, look around, put on some calming music, some Eric Satie or something like that. Something to just mellow you out because you're going to want to reset. Because in a couple of minutes, like 2 to 10 minutes is usually what I take. Then we'll start setting up the scuba gear. When my mind is reset to chilled mode, then I start unpacking the gear. The first thing I do while I'm facing forward on the ski is I open up the front compartment, I get my mask and snorkel out, I get a regulator out, I get the dive flag out, and if I need the second shorty wetsuit, I'll get that out as well. I then hook the mask and snorkel that's in the bag around part of the handlebars. I do the same with the regulator, make sure it's wrapped around the handlebar so it doesn't fall off. I then get my dive flag up and secured. So there's a line that holds it snugly attached to the jet ski. And that line also tied around that flag ensures that if it does fall off, I'm not going to lose it. It's just going to be, it'll probably just fall to the side of the ski. If it's rough water or the conditions are a little dicey out there, I'll leave my um, life jacket on as long as I can. Otherwise, I take my life jacket off and I strap it around part of the handlebars as well so it doesn't come loose. Quick note on the dive flag. It took me several attempts to figure out a good configuration for where to put the dive flag on the ski and how to secure it. On my previous video, I used to put the dive flag on the back of the ski and the bottom part would go through that back hook on the ski and through the back handle. That would help keep it secure. And then I also put a line attached to the top of it and down to the back handle. On this configuration, I'm putting the dive flag on the front part of my ski on the side of the steering wheel. I found like just by playing around that that pole would fit in there and it would get to a point where it was nice and secure. Make sure though that you're not scraping against any wire or electronics when you're trying to find a good spot for your dive flag. This is probably going to be one of the annoying things. It's just something you're going to have to figure out for your ski. What's the best way to do it? So just some notes on that. You're probably going to want to run some test configurations long before you go out to make sure you know where that flag is going to go up. Because you don't want to get out there on the ocean, get all ready, and then figure out, wow, you can't keep your dive flag up. And don't even think about going out without a dive flag up. That's a horrible idea, especially if you got choppy water or big swells. Because if you're underwater and you lose track of your ski and you come up and you can't find your ski because there's no dive flag, that's going to really suck. Okay, now it's time to get geared up. I call this an order of battle, and the order in which I do things depends almost entirely on the conditions. If there's big swells out there, or if there's a really strong current, I make sure that I keep my life jacket on and I get turned around on the ski facing backwards. And if the conditions are rough, a strong current or big swells, then the first thing I'll do is I'll make sure I put on my fins. And I use the fins on the side, the same side that's going to be where I take my tank from. So if it's rough conditions, put your fins on first. If for whatever reason you get thrown off your ski and it's a strong current, uh, you might not be able to get back to your ski unless you have fins on. And that will really suck. You'll just be taken away. Bye bye, ski. So put your fins on first and keep your life jacket on if you're not confident that the conditions are easy for you to deal with. Because if you get in that water, get thrown off, you'll be in a much better position to get back to your ski. So after you get turned around backwards, facing backwards on the ski, you put your fins on first if it's bad conditions. If not, you don't have to, I wouldn't recommend putting them on yet. At this point, I start to untie the rope that's securing the pony tank and the jetpack. And once I get that untied, then I make sure that I have another little short line, or I can put that pony tank, one of the clamps, attached to the BCD. That way, if it falls off, if the pony tank falls to the side because of rough waters, it's always going to stay attached to something and not go to the bottom of the ocean without me. After I get that rear line completely unstrapped, that's where it's attached to the back handle, that stays on there. I then take the other end of that line, the free end, and I create an eye loop in it. That eye loop is going to be used to attach the BCD in because we're going to put the BCD on in the water. Much easier to do. I strongly recommend you don't try to do it on the jet ski. I've tried both ways several times, and putting it on the water is by far the easiest. And make sure that I put that loop, that eye loop, and I connect it onto the BCD, that clip on the BCD first. That way, if I get the BCD unconnected, unstrapped from the back handle, if it falls into the water, it'll always be attached to that rear line. So I do that first. I unhook the shoulder straps, and then from there, I yank the BCD up. You got to yank it really hard, especially if you got integrated weights in there, and I put it on the seat. Now the BCD is secured to the line in case it falls off or I fall off. The pony tank, if it's secured to the BCD, it's going to be a pain in the butt to get that BCD onto the seat. So that's why I sometimes keep a small line on the back handle so I can just clip the pony tank to that back line, that small short line instead. From here, there's a couple of different options. What I usually do with the BCD secured and on the seat and in position, I yank up one of the tanks, whichever tank I'm using, and I pull it up onto the seat with me right in front, right between my legs, between me and the BCD. And from there, this is just standard rigging up of a tank on a BCD. I've also tried putting the BCD on with just pulling the tank up on the side upright and putting the BCD on that way. Sometimes that's a little bit easier, but sometimes it's awkward because you're facing on the side. For me, the easiest way has been to yank that tank up, put it between my legs, keep it secure, and put the BCD on that way. Something to note, and sometimes I even still forget, is remember you undid your shoulder straps to unhook your BCD from the back handle. So don't forget to reconnect those shoulder straps. If you get in the water and you find that you forgot, no big deal. That's standard, scuba 101 for you to be able to do this in the water. Next up, grab your regulator, unwind it, unwrap it from around the handlebars. For this, you can sometimes turn to the side, and so you can be on the side of the ski, and that way you can hold the handle. But what I do, I usually just stay facing backwards, and I grab the handle with handlebars with one hand to keep me steady, and with the other hand, I unwrap the regulator from the handlebars. Put the regulator on the tank, and then make sure the hose is secured to the BCD, to the inflator. Now it's standard BCD setup. Blue water relaxes all fish. Big wheels run around further. Bruce Willis rocks or ruins all films. So you get your regulator on. I turn on the pressure. First thing I make sure check the PSI. So this is standard scuba stuff. Just go through this on your own. You should know how to do this already. Make sure you check your regulators and your inflator, all that good stuff. Once you get your BCD all rigged up, make sure you fully inflate it. So what you're going to do now is you're going to slowly let that BCD fall off the side of the jet ski that the tank was on and just fall into the water. Make sure that you don't do this until you can see every part of that line, that rear line that's attached to the BCD. If there's a part of the line that you can't see and you let that BCD roll off, it might be wrapped around your dive knife. It might be wrapped around the jetpack. It might be wrapped around something that is going to take into the water. If you didn't already put your pony tank on at this time, uh, put the pony tank on before you let it fall into the water and use one of those clips to clip it to your BCD. Something else I forgot to mention is if you're wearing a second wetsuit like I do sometimes, I make sure that I put that wetsuit on first before the flippers. And that's like a little awkward, especially if it's in rough water, but it's totally doable. With the BCD fully set up and now in the water attached to the rear line, now you can get your mask ready, whether you're using a defogger or just spitting in it. Another trick I've learned that's very helpful is I first splash my face with the water, the ocean water, And that really helps to like remove any sweat and bring the temperature on my face down a little bit so it doesn't create that fogging sensation. Get my mask on, and if I haven't already put on my fins, then I make sure I get my fins on at this time. This time I look around, make sure there's nothing I'm going to jump into that's going to harm me or I'm going to harm it, like jumping, falling on a turtle or something like that, or jumping into a whole bunch of jellyfish, stinging jellyfish. That would suck. Something else to also note, if during the process of setting up the BCD, if you ever feel like you're standing up and your jet ski, if it feels like a big swell is coming in, your jet ski is going to tip over, just let yourself fall into the water. Don't jump off. Don't try to stay on the ski because you're going to make the ski top heavy. What you should do if you think there's a chance that that ski can tip over is make sure that you just let yourself fall off and roll off the ski. To follow up on that note, whenever you get into the water, try to get into the water as gently as possible. Just let yourself fall into the water on the side of the ski that the tank was on. The tank that's now configured and attached to the BCD, that side of the jet ski is going to be less heavy. So if you try to roll off the side of the ski with the other tanks on, that increases the chances of tipping the ski. So you want to get off your ski if you can from the side that the tank is no longer on, the empty sidewell. And when you do, don't jump off. Just let yourself slowly fall into the water. And whenever you get into the water off your ski, always be aware of the current. Whenever you get out there, make sure you look what the current is doing. Check if the mooring ball is throwing off a wake, there's a strong current. Or if that line is pulled really tight, the mooring lines, and you're jet ski is really tight on those mooring lines, there's a strong current. So whenever you get into water, make sure that you always keep a hand on your ski. That way, if you the current won't sweep you away. If you get off of your ski and you don't know there's a big current, that current could take you away down from your ski and you might not be able to get back to your ski. And that would suck, especially if you're 6 to 9 miles out on the Atlantic Ocean. So when you get off your ski, try to always keep a hand on it and then ease yourself back to the rear line that's attached to your BCD. Now from here, it's pretty basic scuba setup info. You just put your BCD on in the water. This shouldn't be a problem. It should be real easy. Before you start putting on your BCD, make sure you look at all the lines, the primary, second stage regulator, and the backup. Um, Make sure they're not tucked inside the BCD. Make sure they're outside of the BCD. Make sure they're not wrapped around that rear line. Make sure your inflator isn't wrapped around the rear line. Make sure your BCD is free and clear so you can just strap it around your shoulders and step into it. Several times I've gotten a little bit of rush and I was in the water and I was in a hurry to put on my BCD and I would get 15 feet underwater and only to find out that my secondary regulator was tucked behind my back in my BCD. So that's a pain in the butt. And so when you get to the bottom, you have to undo your BCD, and it becomes a practice in uh, taking on and off your gear underwater. So make sure that everything's free and clear from lines so you can easily put on BCD. So for me, I always go out with my underwater jetpack. Before I get into the water, I fully untie my jetpack from the last line that's connecting it, that blue strap. I fully untie that. And then I set the heavy portion of the jetpack, the battery first in the sidewell. And I've never had it come out of there or pop out of there. And I leave it there and I get my BCD on first. Once I get my BCD on, I'll swim to or pull myself if there's a strong current to the side of the jet ski, and then I'll get a hold of my jetpack. Once I have everything configured and set up, then I'll unhook my BCD from that rear line. If it's a really, really strong current, and I don't think I can overcome that current with my jetpack and my finning. What I'll do is I will stay attached, I'll leave my BCD attached to that rear line until I can pull myself up to the side of the jet ski. And then when I get there, I'll unattach the rear line from my BCD. Then I'll pull myself towards the front of my jet ski. Then I'll pull myself along those mooring lines to the mooring ball, and then I'll make my descent. I've only had to do that about 3 or 4 times so far out here in the Florida Keys. Both times have been out at the deeper shipwreck dives, Spiegel Grove and the Duane. It can have some really nasty currents out there. The last bit of advice also relates to currents. When you're returning to your ski from diving and you come up to your ski, make sure that you come up to the front part of it, to the mooring lines where they're moored up to the mooring ball. Don't try to ascend to the back of your ski where that line is, because if there's a current and if you short that, and if you miss that line, that current's going to take you away. So whenever you come up to your ski, make sure you come up to the front part of it. Keep a hand on it when you're going around to the back, and keep a hand on it while you hook up that line as well. Or if you want to use both hands, you can do that too. Just make sure you always keep a strong hold of that rear line. So that's it. Scuba diving off a jet ski off the coast of Key Largo in the Florida Keys. Really easy, really fun.